Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the State of Hoops podcast. This is your co-host, Todd Schleckaway, along with my fellow co-host, Nate Malchow. Chow, how are you doing today?
Doing awesome, Schleck. March Madness is here, and we're in deep already with tournaments going on and just a lot of great things. And this is the time on the podcast, so we always zero in on. And I think you said it best. You'll sleep in May once all this stuff is done. So 1, 2, 3, go. Let's roll.
Yeah, what a great week of basketball in South Dakota, Nate. I spent some time out at the Summit League tournament at the Premier Center. Didn't go to every session, but I went to different sessions. And first and foremost, what a great South Dakota gathering that is. You go up to the concourses at halftime and between games, and it's what I like to describe as a who's who of basketball. Aficionados in the state, former players, coaches. It's just a great gathering place. And of course, if you're a USD fan or an SDSU fan, oftentimes it's a spring break vacation for those fans. But what a tradition Sioux Falls has established hosting that Summit League tournament. And it's just kind of a rite of passage as we transition here from winter to spring.
It is. And what a great event. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get out there just with our school obligations at Washington with our tournaments and everything going on. But I'm glad that you were able to get out there, Schleck, and see a lot of familiar faces. I remember when the Summit first came to Sioux Falls, this had to be, close to 20 years ago when it was in the old Sioux Falls Arena. And I just remember as a young coach going to that and just mesmerized by the whole atmosphere of all these schools coming in, congregating. You had the pomp and circumstance of the bands, of all the personnel that are with the teams. And in Sioux Falls, we had never seen something like that, obviously, before. And here we are close to 20 years later in a bigger venue and on national TV. Events like this certainly has brought a spotlight to South Dakota and who we are and the traditions that we have here. And you see that easily with the support each and every year that gets out to the Premier Center.
Yeah, and that's a good transition to kind of talk about how the Summit League tournament unfolded, Nate. And as usual, the toast of the town once again is the South Dakota State women. They had a battle that they prevailed against the North Dakota State women, the top two teams in the Summit League all season long. They had split during the regular season, and the Jacks made just enough plays down the stretch. I know both that you and I watched that game on television. And knowing you like I do, Nate, I kept thinking when I was watching it on TV, that was your type of game. That was a Nate Malchow type of game. Why don't you tell our viewers and listeners why you enjoyed that game?
Well, to me, everybody likes the high-scoring games, but these two teams are getting after it on the defensive end. I mean, to see a work of art with kids in position and closing out and getting hands up and knowing matchups. As a former coach, I'm watching that saying, this is beautiful with how hard both teams are playing on the defensive end. You have the matchups between Meyer and Coonan on the inside and just how those two teams are able to run their offenses to set those posts up for post touches. Yes, post play and just utilizing the paint and the block. And one thing that I was just so impressed with is that both teams, their interior passing, short distance interior passing was just a thing of beauty. The bounce passes, catching those posts in position to score and go up. And I think any young player can look at that or coaches at any level. The post passes and getting posts in position to score, in my opinion, is a lost art. And if you watch that game this afternoon, both teams were getting setups and high-low situations. And as a former coach and as a coach who really believed in the high-low game and the posts, I loved it. I mean, it was just fantastic to see and to see that active post position in a game. And you see that a lot in the women's game and utilizing just those advantages.
Yeah, and to your point, Chow, the defenses in the half court were so good in that game. Neither team shot it particularly well from the outside, primarily because the defense was so good. But the threes that were made more often than not were when the player got it into the post, reestablished themselves, inside out basketball. And I know you talk a lot about that. So congratulations again to Coach Johnston and the Jacks. You know AJ pretty well, and what a remarkable career, and he just continues to produce year in and year out.
Yeah, we are talking about a national level Hall of Fame coach that has been with us in Aaron Johnston for 20, maybe close to 25 years at this point, at the helm for the SDSU Jacks women's program. And he has been the constant. I mean, think of all the players that have gone through there. And I think this was number 13 or 14 with the Summit League title. But what a job getting players ready to play at the right time of the year and a great atmosphere. And hats off to North Dakota State, too. They've had a heck of a year and a resurgent with that program. You know, they won all those titles in the 80s and the 90s, and just seeing a resurgence in that program. And I think we have a little bit of a rivalry for years to come, and that's awesome to see.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention the USD women's program had a really good bounce back season. They were clearly the third best team in the Summit League. They just had the misfortune of running into the Jacks on in the semis, but really established themselves on the right trajectory. And so, congratulations to the USD women and Coach Amy down there in Vermilion. I think they set the stage to for a nice little run here in future years.
Yeah, congrats to the Yotes making the semifinals, and they had some big wins this year as well. So basketball's alive and well in South
Yep.
Dakota.
And then, as we talk about the men's side of the bracket in the Summit League, Nate, a couple storylines I wanted to touch on. The Jacks men ran into a juggernaut in St. Thomas in the first round and played pretty well, especially in the first half. Just couldn't sustain it over the whole game offensively. But I wanted to give some recognition to Matthew Moores. He played his final collegiate game, and what a career. How often can we say a South Dakota kid has been on the radar in the state since seventh grade, Nate? Think about that. And Will Matthews, a player that we want to have on at some point, the podcast, to kind of relive his career. And in your role as AD at Washington, Nate, I know you go back and can remember when he came to Warrior Gym as a seventh or eighth grader and just put up major numbers. So congratulations on a great basketball career to Matthew Moores. It was great having him finish it in Brookings for the Jacks, but even going back to Yankton, those are the type of players and storylines that I love to follow on this podcast.
Yeah, Matthew, I've known since he was a little boy and playing basketball that time. His dad, Ryan, is the athletic director down at Yankton High School, who I consider a good friend going back to our playing days. And certainly just so much fun to see him through his career. When he was a seventh grader, now think of this, seventh grade, he came into Washington in a double A basketball game and put, I think it was 15 to 17 points on the Warriors at the Warrior Gym as a seventh grader. Forget his eighth grade year, that game switched back to Yankton. He had 41 or 42 as an eighth grader. I just remember sitting next to our principal at the time, Dan Conrad, and we're down there and we're watching this game and we're saying, okay, he's got 25, he's got 30, he's got 35, and he ended up 40 plus as an eighth grader. So just some memories of watching Matthew, also being a part of some a state championship team there in Yankton as well. So hats off on an outstanding career and one of the all-time greats that our state has ever seen.
And another storyline, I think it bears mentioning. Congrats to the USD men's program for keeping it together this year. No one had more adversity in a basketball season collegiately than the USD men, dealing with injuries and shuffling of the roster mid-season. So the coaching staff at USD should be very proud. They put themselves in a position. They got a top 4 seed. They had swept Omaha. Unfortunately, they fell short in the quarters against Omaha, the third game. It's tough to beat a team of that caliber 3 times, but what a season for USD, Nate, given all of the circumstances they faced from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, and they had the struggles early in the season with the injuries and bringing in some new players, I believe, during the season. Is that correct, Schleck?
Yes, they had to get creative with the roster and found some loopholes where they brought in several players who still had eligibility left that were granted a waiver to start playing for them mid-season, Nate.
Yeah, and I think when you look back at a season as a coach and a staff, you evaluate, did I get everything out of the crew that I had? Did I win, lose, draw based on what we had, and the circumstances that we faced. Did we get everything that we got out of that? And I think USD can look back at that and all those different things that they had to work with during the season, and then still come back and get a top 4 seed in the Summit. I believe they'll look back and say we did all we could, put things together and to put ourselves in position to make a run.
Yeah, I agree. And also, one final storyline, just because you and I have a relationship there, Paul Sather at the University of North Dakota, the men's coach, has ties going back to Northern State as a player, as an assistant coach, former head coach at Black Hills State, Northern State, and was a graduate assistant at Wayne State, Nate, for Greg McDermott. But what a career. And he is getting a lot out of his roster and had a really good run in the Summit League tournament. And any thoughts about Coach Sather and what he continues to do in a program that's, I think, viewed nationally and regionally as maybe one of the toughest jobs on the men's side in the Summit League to win at, and he continues to be successful in this new NIL era where players are coming and going. Really want to give a hat tip to Coach Paul Sather because he can flat out coach.
No question, and he's done it at every level. Save, I call him Coach Save. I mean, he was our camp counselor back at the old Northern State camps in the late '80s, early '90s, and I've known him since that time, and it's been awesome to see him succeed at every level because he is truly one of the great guys in coaching. I'm a huge Paul Sather fan, and just the way he goes about his business, everything that he does, leading a program, and again, just one of the good guys in the business, and things haven't changed. You know, he's risen up the ranks, but still have visits with him, maybe like just like I was when I was a young coach, and very easy to cheer for, and best of luck to Paul and his teams.
Well, that puts a bow on our conversation about the Summit League. I always look forward to that event every year in early March in Sioux Falls. There's no other venue or community in that footprint of the Summit League schools that would draw the crowds, the excitement around that event. And so really excited. We always get tickets every year. And so congrats to the Sioux Falls Sports Authority, the Summit League, for another great event and just an annual staple on the sports calendar, not only in Sioux Falls, but South Dakota and the region. So great event.
Thanks for showing up, South Dakota, and supporting that tournament and all the other areas that are involved in that too. But what a special event that is circled on the calendar for all basketball fans.
And we're going to transition at this time to several sponsor ads. Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors. For over 30 years, Pat and Pam Tiefenthaler of Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors have been trusted names in and around the Sioux Falls community. Building relationships that last, they're humbled and honored to serve buyers and sellers with care and expertise. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or navigating a move because life happens, Pat and Pam will walk beside you, guiding you every step of the way. Call Pat or Pam at Tiefenthaler Homes with Hague Realtors today, your trusted partners in Sioux Falls. Visit tiefteam.hague.com or call 605-321-0550.
And if you are looking for trusted financial guidance close to home, visit Charles Schwab's Sioux Falls, South Dakota branch, your local investment firm. Bonnie Struckman and Zach Hansen are financial consultants with over 25 years of combined experience. Their team is here to help you reach your financial goals. Whether you're planning, investing, or just have questions, Bonnie, Zach, and their team put clients first every time. Call 605-231-4844 or search Schwab Sioux Falls at schwab.com to book your appointment today. Charles Schwab, own your tomorrow.
Chow, we're going to transition now and start diving into these three classes of state high school girls basketball tournaments that are coming up. And I want to start with AA. I know you, in your role at Washington High School as activities director, will be heading out to Rapid City here this week and watching the Warriors hit the hardwood in the state AA tournament. I'm just going to kind of read the matchups and we're going to just dive into some analysis and talk about the state AA first. In the opening round, so the quarterfinal round, we got number 1 seed Brandon Valley taking on 8 seed T Area. And then we've got Rapid City Stevens as the 4 seed taking on the Aberdeen Central Golden Eagles as the 5. The night session on day 1 will have 2nd seeded O'Gorman facing off against 7th seeded Mitchell. And then your Warriors, Chow, come in as the 3 seed and they play the Sioux Falls Jefferson Cavaliers. So just I'll open the floor. What are your overall thoughts? What are you looking forward to as you watch this from the lens of an AD, a former coach, and a fan?
I can look at it a lot of different ways. I think when we come into the AA tournament, your top 2 seeds, Brandon Valley seeded number 1 and O'Gorman seeded number 2, certainly have put together seasons and resumes this year to be deserving of those seeds. And there are some talented teams that are in the field, but I think what stands out throughout their body of work is that they've, like I said, they have certainly earned those seeds, and they are going to be they're draws for anybody. But when you head out, and I say this all the time to young coaches, when you prep, to me, the biggest game in the state tournament is the first one. You have to get through the opening round. You have a week prep from some good coaches who have time to prep and get ready for that first game. After that, everything just becomes more compacted because your prep time's shorter. Your routine, you're getting into the second and third day of the state tournament. So we've seen a lot of things happen in that opening round over the years. So that's the most important one to prep for. And then you just kind of roll from there. But looking forward to watching the games, to seeing some great athletes, some great coaches. For me, the AA tournament is very special. It's where I coached for many years and just have a lot of good relationships with the people in Rapid City and also the teams that are in the field. So looking forward to getting out there, cheering on our Warriors and everything too. And anything can happen. So you put yourself in position, but you got to get out there and you got to perform. Anytime you go through a tournament, so many things depend on matchups. Okay. How are we matching up with the other team? The second part is the breaks and the luck. And I don't care how good of a team that you have, at some point during a tournament, you have to have some breaks and you have to have a little luck. Now, those great teams will go make their situations and they'll make their luck. But there's going to be times where all teams are tested during that tournament. So may the best team win.
Well said, Chow. And I think everyone assumes there's going to be some chalk here where Brandon Valley's going to meet up with O'Gorman. But as a wise sage once said, not so fast, my friend. We talked about this last week with Lee Corso used to say that on game day. Wrong sport, but I'm gonna reference the great Lee Corso. But it was only 2 years ago where Rapid City Stevens almost pulled off the stunner against O'Gorman at the Pentagon. And that was a 1-8 game, first game of the day. Weird things happen. And to your point, Nate, that first game, we've seen a lot of different things happen. You talked several podcasts ago about one of your state title teams, all the lower seeds advance. That doesn't happen often. So just because there's 2 teams that everyone's talking about that seem to be getting deservedly so the coverage because of their exploits, their record, their personnel, doesn't mean that they won't be tested. So it's really going to be interesting to me to follow the AA. I really think that Washington Jefferson game's intriguing, Nate. I know Jamie Parrish always talks about, I've coached summer league with him at Avera for numerous summers. I always enjoy talking to Coach Parrish, and he always does a really good job of devising game plans around star players. And so I'm really interested to see how Coach Parrish and the Warriors tackle the Brindley Altenburg challenge for Jefferson. I know the Warriors beat Jefferson twice during the season. The second game was really tight. And so that'll be one, I think, from a fan's perspective, as someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight, I'm really interested and I'll tune into that one on TV, Nate. And then, of course, you got O'Gorman and Mitchell in that night bracket, and Mitchell's got some really strong young players in CeCe Morgan and Nia Talley to go along with Addie Seamson, the senior, who's going to Augustana. That'll be the biggest challenge. I know Mitchell played O'Gorman during the year, but the pressure that they're going to see in that game from O'Gorman will challenge Mitchell beyond their years. And so that'll be interesting as well. And then I think another coin flip game is Rapid City Stevens, Aberdeen Central. Central actually beat Stevens during the year, and Stevens is the higher seed. that game could go either way. So really looking forward to seeing how the AA girls unfolds.
Should be a great tournament and looking forward to get out there and seeing some talented teams get after it.
All right. Well, let's transition now to Class A. And again, the Class A girls tournament will take place at the Watertown Civic Arena. One of the notes I made when I was doing prep for this is 5 of the 8 teams in Class A are returning state tournament teams. So a very experienced field, teams who've been here before. And of course, I think the big headline is, can my Pia Luta finish an undefeated season, finish what they think and what a lot of fans, they fell just short of last year in the state championship game. I think my Pia Luta is going to be extremely motivated. They open up with West Central, who's very talented but very young. That is the 2 game. Hamlin is the 1 seed versus 8 seed Lakota Tech. Sioux Valley 4 seed, Lennox 5 seed, and then the nightcap, Wagner's the 3 and Sioux Falls Christians the 6. So I think the A tournament, there's a lot of parity up and down the seed lines. That would be my first take looking at the bracket.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of experienced teams. They have been through the weekend now, 5 of the 8. So there's a lot that goes into a state tournament weekend that's different from any point in the season. And the obvious fact is playing 3 games in a row and who can put together 3 days of good basketball. But I don't think many of those who haven't been a part of those maybe understand the routines and everybody what they go through with your meals and your team time and your scout time and then your shoot arounds and all of that. So how those are managed. And I think those 5 teams that are returning have been through that with their staffs and with their kids, and knowing how to manage a weekend can be an advantage. But yeah, there's multiple teams that in the A's, I think that can show up and surprise and do some things. Mapia Luta is the team coming in with the best record, and I'm looking forward to watching some of their games on TV and playing at Watertown Civic Arena on a big floor and the tempo that they play and the pressure that they put on teams. So whoever's going to play them is going to have to be able to handle some of that pressure and explosiveness on offense because they're putting up a lot of points too. But overall, impressed with the field and Watertown Civic Arena environment. That crowd's going to be right on top of you. Been a part of many games there, playing and coaching, and that place will be loud.
And that's kind of a good point, Nate, because we have Hamlin as the number 1 seed. And if you're from Hayti, Bryant, Lake Norden, Hazel, they're going to be at that Watertown Civic Arena in droves. And I'm really intrigued. Lakota Tech is not your typical 8 seed. They can flat out score points. They have that 8th grader, Amelia Shangru. We talked about her last week. How about that matchup? Amelia Shangru versus Addie Neuendorf. That is going to be one to watch in that game. That is not your typical 1-8 game. I'm telling the fans now, buckle up because that could be a track meet, that game. Sioux Valley Lennox, I see that game more as a toss up. That's going to be an interesting one to follow. Lennox had a very good season, and Sioux Valley is one of those returning teams with some good size and good shooting ability to complement their size. And then the one that I'm really intrigued at that I'm going to be flipping on as well would be that Wagner versus Sioux Falls Christian game. Now, I did some color commentary for Midwest Sports Plus this high school season. I had the opportunity to call Sioux Falls Christian girls game. And I'm telling you, in Class A, if you look at all the Class A teams, I don't think there's a better half-court defensive team than Sioux Falls Christian. They have length, they have athleticism on the wings, and they have Leslie Setzer inside. And so that's going to be a fascinating matchup. They have length and size to throw at Ashland Opal. And so my early analysis of that one is Wagner's going to need to get scoring contributions from a lot of different players if they're going to be able to score efficiently in the half court. Sioux Falls Christian can really bring it. I was thoroughly impressed with their half court defense. But Wagner's got the advantage of having, the only McDonald's All-American girls player we've ever had who can score at all 3 levels. She can impact the game defensively by blocking shots. So I think that one, get your popcorn. That one maybe must be TV, Nate.
Yeah, that will be a great matchup, and just seeing how Christian is going to defend Copel. And, what are they going to stay in the man, or are they going to run some double teams or some other adjustments? We know that Copel is, the only McDonald's All-American player, like you said, that we have ever had in South Dakota. And what a career, culminating with another trip to the state tournament. Looking forward to watching all of this. And I think one thing that you have to look for, we're talking about some teams with some players with star power, the leading scorers, those who have been consistent across the board. But in a state tournament format, you're going to have some of your quote unquote role players step up and hit some shots. And so many state tournaments that I've been a part of, and you see maybe that unsung hero that comes out and hits two big baskets when those star players are getting double teamed, because the coaches can adjust to that, and they can draw some of those things up. So it forces some of your players maybe who haven't been in a position like that to hit some shots. And that's what makes March special. And you're going to see some of that in these tournaments with some of those kids maybe who don't have all of the press recognitions and all that, having to step up and hit some shots. Just ask Steve Kerr and John Paxson, right? Back in the Bulls run right there, is going to get open, and they got to knock him down.
Well said. Well, let's transition to Class B. And again, the Class B girls state tournament is going to be at First Bank and Trust Arena, home of the Jackrabbits that we talked about earlier. And that'll be a neat venue for a state tournament now that it's renovated, Nate. And I know you won one of your state championships at the old Frost, now First Bank and Trust Arena. So I know you have fond memories of playing a state tournament at that venue. But any thoughts on Brookings hosting the state B, Chow?
What teams are going to see is a palpable buzz in the town of Brookings. Anytime that we played in state tournaments there, it was right after the Summit League tournament. So you have a community that's going to be fired up with that Jackrabbits win today. The weather is going to be beautiful this week, it looks like, too. It is a fun venue to play in. To be honest with you, I haven't been there since they've had the renovations, but again, similar to the Watertown Arena, that crowd's going to be right on top of you. And it's going to be loud. I've had a couple coaches that are playing there that have reached out to me that are just excited to have the opportunities to bring their teams and to play in the First Bank and Trust Arena, formerly Frost Arena. I still call it Frost, just all those years playing there. But it was so loud in there at some of our tournaments. I remember playing against Mitchell, against Brandon Valley when we had those rivalries. We had to adjust some things in practice where the week leading up, we would crank the music on high. And I think some of my players didn't like all the 80s, 90s music that I was playing, but we cranked that up on purpose to force communication with our players to be able to talk to each other, because there will be times when that venue gets so loud that those coaches or those players maybe aren't used to some of that. So they are going to have to make sure that they get their communication right. We had signs, we had everything right there, because when you get to that state tournament in that venue, it's going to be very loud, and the coaches and the teams need to be prepared for that.
And I think that'd be a great permanent facility to be in a rotation for a state girls
No
tournament,
question.
whether it's B, A, A. You sprinkle that arena in with the Pentagon, for example, just great venues for girls state basketball tournaments. And so I think the Class B field really should be excited to get to play in that type of atmosphere, in that type of venue. Let me run through the field for the state Class B. Number 1 Lyman plays number 8 seed Corsica Stickney. That's a rematch of a game they played early in the season, which Lyman won, but it was a competitive game. Number 4 seed Ethan plays number 5 Coleman Egan. And then in the night session of the quarterfinals, number 2 seed Parkston plays number 7 Centerville. And they're defending champs, number 3 seed Bennett County. They host the Ranchers from Harding County as the 6th seed. Any initial thoughts on the field overall, Chow?
Just a lot of good matchups there. Again, the people that I've talked to from the Bees are excited about getting everybody in there. And I think one thing about the Bees, when you look at some of these teams that have played each other, there's parity amongst some teams having big victories over each other, and some of them I've heard have even been lopsided at some point. But again, you get to one venue, you get to a neutral site, and who's going to show up and play. And I think you have multiple teams in here that Again, if they put together their best basketball, if they have the matchups and they get a little luck and some breaks, I can go win this thing.
Yeah, I think there's 4 or 5 teams that have a really viable chance to win the whole thing in State B, which makes for a very fun tournament. Even Centerville is a 7 seed. I had a chance to call one of their games at the Pentagon in early February on Midwest Sports Plus. They have a player by the name of Izzy Eide, only a sophomore. She's already gone over 1,000 points. Centerville won the State B tournament 2 years ago. Last year, they made it back. This is their 3rd straight year in the State B. The seed won't matter to them. They could be a threat. They have girls who can flat out shoot it. And I believe, you had a conversation recently about Parkston and some of their talent. So that I think on paper is one that really intrigues me, that Parkston versus Centerville, a lot of unknowns there. See how that one shapes out specifically in the first round.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to keeping track of that while I'm out in Rapid City and seeing how those first round games go. I mean, it's just that Thursday is such a fun day. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're at one tournament, you're keeping track of the other two and you're seeing who's playing who. And I mean, I know there's talk of tournament formats and getting teams to one side. That's for a different day because this year, at least we're going to be in those separate sites, but you're watching the other tournaments and you're looking to see what's going on and maybe who pulls the upset and who's playing their best basketball. And I think everybody keeps their phones on, and it's so easy to access that now. You can be at one and you can watch one on TV, and if you're at home, you can throw up 3 TVs. But again, that's what makes March special. Put them all on, watch them, see how it plays out.
And I would like to give some acknowledgement to South Dakota Public Broadcasting. They do a great job, Chow. When we were playing, which we're getting old, but it wasn't that long ago, in the 90s, we talked about this a while back. Even all the boys tournaments weren't televised statewide. That Warner Herald famous game wasn't even on statewide TV in 1992. Well, fast forward to today, if you're a fan of basketball in South Dakota, every state tournament game in every class is on one of the SDPB channels, either over broadcast on your TV or streaming, and it's free. And not only that, Chow, but the consolation rounds are televised. So it's a really big deal. You make a state tournament, and grandpa and grandma in Arizona can watch every single game. And it used to be where they only televised the quarterfinal round and then the night sessions on Friday and Saturday. Now, the exposure out there for all these kids who get to play in a state tournament and teams, it's really great. And so it's almost like overstimulation for me because I have all 3 SDPV channels queued up and have one on my iPad, one on my TV, maybe one on my computer. It's a basketball fan's dream. And I know you would agree that public broadcasting has done a great job giving exposure to our state tournaments.
Thank you to SDPB. I mean, any activity that we have in South Dakota at the high school level, whether it's fine arts or whether it's athletics, SDPB is all over this state tournament coverage. You had the state debate tournament this past weekend for fine
Mhm.
arts, and then we'll transition into the basketball tournament this weekend. But SDPB is there covering it. So thank you to the guys that gals there that take care of the coverage. But yeah, we're pretty lucky, and you can get any game. My parents are in their 80s now, and they're still living up in Aberdeen. But my mom has a couple iPads on, and she's going in between games, and she's able to watch everything. So I mean, special things like that where you can call people, you can connect, you can talk about the games. One thing that drives my family nuts is I can't keep one game on at one time. I got to get more screens or get something because I'm changing between games. I'm kind of keeping track of who's doing what. And sometimes I joke, my wife and my kids will walk out and they say, "Dad, you can't sit still during some of this." But it's sure fun to be able to have access to that and be able to see how teams are doing. And again, talking with other people and going through the matchups, it's what makes it special here. Schleck, plain and simple.
Yeah, so we're really excited to follow again the state AA girls basketball tournament in Rapid City at the Summit Arena at the Monument, the state A tournament at the Watertown Civic Arena, and the state B tournament at Brookings First Bank and Trust SDSU Arena. So we wish all teams the best of luck, and we look forward to following it starting on Thursday throughout the weekend.
Best of luck to all the teams, all the coaches, all the players, all the managers, the cheerleaders, everybody that gets to attend this, and the communities. Special time. And this is where memories are made. And often I get questions about coaching and when you miss it and all of that. Really, this is the time of the year that you really miss too. And being able to have that special moment to bring a squad to the state tournament and play under the lights, play against the best and put it together for one weekend. So best of luck to everybody.
And that's a good transition for several more sponsor ads. I want to take a moment to thank the team at Insight. They're the folks who helped us with the visual assets to bring this podcast to life. And I can tell you, they don't just make things look good. They dive in, ask the right questions, and come back with great ideas that actually work. Whether it's branding, campaigns, or creative strategy, Insight has a way of helping businesses stand out and connect with people in meaningful ways. If you're looking for a partner to make an impact on your business, check them out at insightmarketingdesign.com.
And if you're looking for high quality custom gear, look no further than Park Bench Apparel, your South Dakota owned print shop. Park Bench Apparel specializes in screen printing, embroidery, laser, and UV printing, plus unique giftware for every occasion. Outfitting your company or team, they have you covered with fully customizable team stores and corporate apparel. Find Park Bench Apparel at the South Dakota High School Activities Association events and follow the action on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Park Bench Apparel, wear an adventure.
And the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame. Love South Dakota hoops? Discover the legacy at the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving our state's rich basketball history for generations to come. Visit their incredible exhibits at the Sanford, Pentagon, and Sioux Falls and explore stories, milestones, and legends online at www.sdbbhof.com. From iconic players and coaches to unforgettable teams, this is South Dakota basketball.
Bleacher Preachers!
Well, it's time for our famous Bleacher Preacher segment. And Nate, I didn't think that you and I wanted to be the ones making predictions for the State B, the State A, and State AA girls tourneys. We want the fans of South Dakota, fans in the communities of the teams and schools playing in the state girls tournaments this weekend, all three classes. We want you to engage with our podcast either on social media, send us direct messages on X or Instagram, or shoot us an email at stateofhoopspodcast@gmail.com and tell us your predictions on who will win the State B girls tournament, the State A girls tournament, and the State AA tournament. It's that simple. Our fans are more equipped than we are to make these predictions. Let us know what you think is going to happen at all three classes, and we will maybe give you some love on social media.
We want to hear from you. It's tournament time. This is what people are talking about at this point of the year. So reach out to those outlets that Schleck had mentioned, and we want to get your take on predictions and insight into the state tournaments.
Shout out.
And Nate, as we prepare to wrap up another episode of the State of Hoops podcast, it's time for our favorite shout out segment. And I'm going to circle back to an earlier episode that we did with Lance Luchins about his dad, Larry Luchins, and his legacy in South Dakota. And on that episode, Lance talked about this annual award that Lance and his wife Renee started to honor his dad's legacy and his namesake in the coaching fraternity. And so just this week, Lance and Renee identified the two recipients of the 2026 Larry Luchins Coach of Influence Award. And Brandon Candelin, the head girls basketball coach at St. Thomas More, is going to be a recipient for the girls coach, as is Mark Amdahl. So both of those coaches, and I know you have relationships with both of them, Nate, and I'm going to let you talk about it. But really, on behalf of the State of Who's podcast, we want to give a shout out to Brandon Candelin and Mark Amdahl for being the 2026 recipients of the Larry Luchins Coach of Influence Award.
Congratulations to Brandon and Mark, two of my friends in the business. Have had a chance to have our teams compete in the off seasons, and actually Washington played St. Thomas More for several years there too. But certainly two of the best. Their records speak for themselves. Their titles speak for themselves. But when you're talking about a coach of influence, what are you doing to get kids prepared for the real world and teaching them the lessons through the game to make them better people and to make better teams and to go out and rep your school and your community? And these are two of the best that have done it here in South Dakota. So what a great award by the Luchins family to honor Coach Larry Luchin's legacy and impact on young people and being a positive influence. Lessons learned through activities, through sports and fine arts are some of the best lessons that are preparing kids for being independent, for getting out in the real world. And a lot of that, yeah, it comes with success, but it comes with times where you maybe struggle and you have to work with kids to get them back up on their feet and get them going. So this award represents that. And congrats to Brandon and Mark of being two great role models and ambassadors for the basketball community. Hats off to these two and go enjoy that recognition.
What a great platform too, Nate, is, we have such a great tradition in South Dakota where at a state basketball tournament, both on the boys and girls side, every class, Spirit of Sioux Award winner recognition. We have the Spirit of Six Award for student sections and cheerleaders. And then you add this Larry Luchin's Coach of Influence into the mix that gets acknowledged at the state tournament that coach who's receiving the award chooses to attend. Just adds to the state's culture and history that we love to talk about and promote on this podcast. So I appreciate you sharing your coaching relationships with both Coach Candelin and Coach Ondal. And again, on behalf of the podcast, we offer our sincerest congrats to both of them.
And congrats to those two and also all the coaches out there. Never underestimate the influence that you have on our young kids and our next generation. And thank you for taking the time to work with kids and to shape them for growth, not only in the classroom, but in these opportunities outside the classroom. So thanks to all of you for doing that. Sometimes coaching isn't an easy business. We all know that. But at the end of the day, what are we doing for kids and what are we doing to help them get better? So awesome award from the Luchins family.
And that wraps up another episode of the State of Hoops podcast. Just a reminder, we encourage viewers and listeners and fans of hoops in South Dakota to subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Also follow us on social media on YouTube, Instagram, and X. Until next time, along with my fellow co-host Nate Malchow, this is Todd Schleckaway. Have a great day.